The Investigator's Toolbox is here. Are you a licensed investigator, an investigative or security professional? How would you like to gain work-based skills, be more productive, and grow your business? Well, welcome to the investigatorstoolbox.com. Check out this industry-changing website that's pioneering into the future today. You can network with other investigators in our forums. You can take a webinar, check out a blog, or read an article to brush up on your skills. You can visit our vast resource catalog of research websites and bookmark them in your own private library. Everybody's talking about the Investigator's Toolbox. This really is the future of networking, learning, and resource management. Check this out. For a limited time, we're offering a legacy discount for new members. If you sign up early, we'll save you 25%. Take advantage of exclusive discounts from site partners like Crosstracks, DelphPoint, PI Magazine, Hetherington Group, Scope Now, Parabon, and so many more. Just visit the website investigators-toolbox.com and check out the demo video in the Who We Are section. Can you afford 41 cents a day? If the answer is yes, then don't delay. Join the community. investigatorstoolbox.com. These discounts won't last. That's www.investigators-toolbox.com. Thanks for tuning in to today's show. Today we have the husband and wife duo of Karen and Dean Beers. They specialize in death investigations. Today, we're going to take a look at what it takes to do this kind of work. Karen and Dean also have served or are serving on the boards of various nationwide associations. Now let's catch up with our guest as we visit good old Colorado one more time. Please welcome Karen, Dean, and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everybody to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Today we're going to try something new. It's the first time we're actually having a husband and wife duo as guests today. So I reached out to Dean Beers and Karen Beers. I've known them for quite some time through NCISS. And one thing we haven't talked about on the show yet really is death investigations. And I thought these guys would be great to bring light to it. So I want to welcome Dean and Karen to the program. How are you guys?
We're good, thanks. And thanks for having us on. This will be pretty exciting for everybody. We always appreciate it.
Tell me a little bit about your guys' background. You're in Colorado. Tell me exactly how you guys got into the business and what are you doing these days?
The real short of it is I've been in business since 1987. I did some of your general legal investigations and things like that. And then Karen joined in 96 because of a motor vehicle collision that was actually 20 years ago. After that, I had to find something different to do because I couldn't do business as administratively and also do the work needed. I just wasn't able to function that way.
Right.
And unfortunately, I hadn't taught Karen the administrative aspects of the business. So I found a training opportunity at our local coroner's office and then went through that and then got interned and then completed their training program and then got hired part-time and then full-time. That's how that got started, but I'll let her tell how she got started with me and with the death investigation training.
Yeah, Karen's no slouch. You've got a pretty impressive background too. So tell me a little bit, Karen, how you got into doing what you're doing.
And he just came home one day and he thought I would be good at it as well. And he thought I'd be interested in it. So I told him no, and he convinced me to at least go through the program. And I did, and I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
So then in 2008, when I left the coroner's office, I went back to private and she joined me back in the private. And we focused primarily on death investigation, serious bodily injury, personal injury, negligence, and civil and criminal cases, expert consultations, and family. So that's what we do.
What is medico? I'm stepping on my words here. Medicological death investigator.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Medical legal. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blah.
That's the joining of medical and legal, but it's a non-medical investigative, but it uses the science of medicine.
Okay.
So that's basically a death investigator. So it's like a forensic investigator, which we also do, but it's specifically focused on death or cases involving a death with that. So when you see medical legal, you're mostly seeing about coroners, deputy coroners, medical examiners, and things like that.
Right.
And all the investigative that goes with it. So we're the guy and gal that report to the forensic pathologists. We're their eyes and ears is how that works out. So a medical legal death investigation is just you can think of it as a forensic death investigator.
Okay. So, and it essentially is, I guess you're saying like, hey, I'm not a doctor, but I have enough experience in doing this type of work. And, because of my background of where I came from, I have the authority to talk about this stuff, right? But I'm not actually a medical doctor, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's pretty close. There's things that we do in our investigative component, but we don't overlap into the medical component. We have our experts as well that help us with that part.
Right.
And then we're able to join them together. And we did all this at the coroner's office. That's where we learned the concept at.
Right.
And then that's how we're able to better serve our clients, is by bringing them that type of expertise to the table.
Okay. So before we jump into all that, and we're certainly going to get to it, I want to just first commend you guys for, I guess, your service to all the different associations that are out there. You guys are highly involved in the industry, and not only are you members of associations, you've served on boards. Karen, you have a whole little, I guess, from what I'm seeing here, like a side business, essentially of association management. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What that is?
Well, for the World Association of Detectives, I am the administrative manager. So I do basically all the administrative work,
right,
and help with new members and just help run the association.
Right.
And then for the National Council of Investigation and Security Services, I am the executive director for that association.
Right. And then for now, you do education committee stuff as well, right?
Well, we were on the committee for that.
Right.
Yeah, we've been on the committee for that. That's, I think, pretty much resolved now with the chair having completed all the course criteria, with NALI. So,
right.
Yeah, we've been involved with that, in CDITC and a few others. Yeah.
Right. And Dean, you're actually a certified legal investigator too, right?
And that's through the National Association of Legal Investigators, NALI, right, which I know you're a member of. And
yes.
And by the way, I know you offered us our kudos, and I know our listeners probably know, but you're pretty heavily involved yourself, with the associations. I won't let the cat out of the bag on one of them.
Yeah.
But
hush, hush, buddy.
That'll be coming up. And Aldonis, and stuff like that. So
yeah.
No, it's we appreciate doing that, and I know you understand it. We just think it's important to the profession that people be involved more than just having their membership, dues collected.
I think one of the things that really impressed me when I first met you guys, and I think I met Karen first, just through the administrative side of joining the associations, but going to a board meeting, and this was NCISS, and what I thought was really cool was that I could go and sit in on the board and not actually be on the board. Like they allowed me to sit in and just check it out. Just the passion that you guys have for these issues, right? And for our our whole community, right? And making sure that throughout the country that we're represented and protected in a way. So it was one of the things I noticed. I was like, wow, this husband-wife team, like these guys are no nonsense. Like they're really, really taking care of business.
Well, and what you see is what you get.
Yes.
You don't other people.
Yeah. It's definitely true. But it's setting good examples, right? So the impression it was making on me as a new jack coming there, I was like, wow, this is something I would want to get involved in because I see the passion and listen, there's passion on both sides on those discussions, right? I remember being in that room there. And, and there are people that people don't always agree, right? You get 16 people in a room having a discussion and all of them are business owners. It can be difficult sometimes, right?
Yeah, we're all stakeholders, and it's important. Yeah. And I remember those meetings you sat in when we first met, and we invite our members to come in and do the very same thing you did.
Yeah.
The members of all the associations can do that. You may not be able to be as interactive at the board issues, but you can certainly be there in the meeting, and particularly in the one that you attended. We specifically wanted you to be interactive in that because of the background that you had coming in.
Yeah.
And the interest you had expressed in being part of the future board. So, yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah, it was hard for me. I'm sitting on my hands going, all right, sit down, dummy. This isn't about you. But I'm just raising my hand. Can I say something, please?
Yeah, we appreciate that passion.
Yeah. It's like sometimes it gets me in trouble though, especially in my own association. It's got me in a lot of trouble, but hey, whatever. It's all good. Seriously, it's so cool. And you guys also do training, right? You have some programs which you've had for a while now. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, Karen doesn't get involved in the speaking like I did, even though she's the one that encouraged me to do it. So, we don't travel as much now, obviously,
right?
But we did develop training programs for speaking engagements for conferences and training and associations. And then in 2012, we developed a website and put 3 or 5 courses on there, basic courses that everybody can use, ethics and things like that.
Right.
And we honestly really didn't do a lot with it, but it had been asked with a couple other training groups to revamp some of those trainings that we have and we share with them. And so we've spent the time this year to start really boosting that up and getting things out there.
Right.
So we're pretty excited about that. We just really need to give people things that they can use as tools, just like you are. You have your toolbox.
Yep.
And, so yeah, it's important.
Yeah, I think it's really important for folks of us that have been in the industry for a while to give back and make sure that those coming up behind us know how to do things or learn how to do things and have that same standard that they hold themselves to, right? This is the proper way to do things. This is how you do this type of work. It's really, really important because, you want the quality of the work being done to remain at a certain level. And by not having this teaching and this oversight, or mentoring or things like that, it definitely, can fall by the wayside. It's definitely a problem.
Oh, definitely. And when I started, there really wasn't any.
Right.
You had to, develop your own. And being involved with NCISS in particular, and NALI to a large degree with their legislative group, I'm on the legislative committee there. We really have to have consistency, professional consistency across the board. And I know our state associations, you're familiar with Aldonis, and we have PPIC and stuff. We really expect that of members, and the members expect that of each other. That's what's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys out in Colorado, I mean, you have your meetings like twice a year where you do training and everything, right? I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, PPIAC has been very involved with training.
Right. Right. Yeah. We had Rod Gagnon on a couple of months ago, and he was talking about, I guess, the teaching and stuff he does with the financial stuff is very interesting. Very.
Yeah, Rod's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we take a break here, I know I got to ask, 'cause it's probably on everybody's mind here. How do you guys treat work and personal life and separating that? Like, do you talk about cases over dinner, or is it like, okay, we're not going to talk about this anymore? Like, how does that look like? How does that work?
Well, usually when we get a case, we separate, we each get the information, and then he reads it and I read it, and then we come together and discuss it.
Right.
Because sometimes, we have different ideas
Sure.
So that's how it works.
So that translates to, Karen's correct and Dina's not.
Well,
wow, you are really intelligent. That is very true.
It's a fly on the wall, right?
Right.
So here's the thing. A lot of people know me from seeing me more than because Karen doesn't really get in the foreground of things.
Sure.
And that's not intentional. That's just more of a comfort level.
Yeah, it's personality.
Because she's so involved in the background. Yeah. In all honesty, there's been many, many cases that the intuition and the attention to detail have been so key to it. I wish I could go through all of those. In our training courses, I mention them frequently because it's really important to understand not just the different perspective, but yeah, that does mean that she's right more often. I'll admit that. But it is important. But she doesn't let that overshadow the way things are. So,
sure.
And that's a good thing. But our dinner conversations at restaurants tend to excite the people around us.
I'm sure they do. They're like, here comes Dr. Doom and Gloom and his spouse. Here we go.
It's pretty important. So we have a great teamwork. Yeah.
So I've had the pleasure of meeting Michael Baden a few times. He's, the coroner from New York, through the Society of Professional Investigators, and
Right.
always an interesting conversation to have with a guy. It's just, the things that folks see when they do these types of investigations. And I picked his brain when, the first time I met him was probably about, 12 years ago. And he was speaking at some event, and I was like, hey, I do a lot of photography of remains on nursing home cases. Like, it's frequently I have to go to a morgue and photograph, and I want to make sure I'm doing it correctly. Can you give me some pointers? And he's like, hey, I'm on my way to my next appointment. I got to walk 10 blocks. Walk with me. So I literally left the event that I was at and walked with the guy for 10 blocks.
There you go.
You know, and I'm like, I'm not missing this opportunity. This is Michael Baden. Like, this is crazy, right? I had watched the HBO series when I was younger, the Medgar Evers, the whole big thing. And now I see him frequently at events, and I'm like, oh, hey, cool. There he is, right? So we are going to dig into the topic at hand here. I wanted to talk about death investigations, but we're going to take a break real quick. So everybody sit tight, and we will be right back. Are you using a case management system? The answer is no. You should really rethink that process. All right. So as you guys know, Crosstracks has been an amazing sponsor of the show. They've just been really supportive. As you guys also know, I didn't used to have a case management system. I was the investigator that was fighting them tooth and nail. I finally decided to give it a whirl, and what a great decision, right? During the COVID shutdown, I was able to actually roll my whole business into it and get completely up and running. My clients love it. I mean, just today, I got a phone call from a client of mine who just couldn't believe how easy it was to access everything and how invoices were there. He actually asked me to go back and upload all my prior cases and put it into Crosstracks. I've been doing business with that firm for, about 8 years, so it's a lot of cases. If you don't use a case management system, you should, right? You should check it out. Give Crosstracks a shot. Contact Brad or one of the teammates over there, and they'll get you up and running with a trial and see if it's for you. If you have used Crosstracks and it's been a while and you're not happy with the system that you're in, go check them out. They're doing a lot of really cool new things. See if it's right for you. If you're unhappy with the system that you're in right now, contact them. The ability for them to roll your system into their system is very easy. Again, you guys know they've been sponsoring this program, and I can't say enough good things about them, but make your own decision. Give it a shot on your own and see if it's right for you.
Did you get the latest issue of PI Magazine? Make sure you visit PIMagazine.com if you don't subscribe already. Check out Matt's column on Podcasting 101 and PI Perspectives. Delve Point keeps on advancing. The commonality search is here. The new data is unlike anything they currently offer and will go in depth in your target's assets and relationships. Use them on everything from jury research and associate connections to business investigations and fraud cases. You don't want to miss these. Visit delvepoint.com for more details. Sign up and use code PIP20 for additional savings. Have you signed up for the Investigator's Toolbox yet? What are you waiting for? Don't miss out. The legacy discount is ending very soon, and you'll miss a great opportunity. Are you serious about growing your business and increasing your knowledge base? Register today at www.investigators-toolbox.com. Use code PIP20 1836 and save an extra $15. What do you do when you get calls for bug sweeps? Did you know USABugSweeps.com, the #1 TSCM provider in the country, pays you a 20% commission for converted sales leads? Stop turning money away. USABugSweeps.com uses top-rated technology, and they cover all of the United States. So save time and make money today. Contact USABugSweeps.com and mention PIP20.
And welcome everybody back to PI Perspectives. This is your host, Matt Spaier. So today I've got Dean and Karen Beers, and they're talking to us from Colorado today. And they have a website called deathcasereview.com, and we're going to talk about death cases. So Karen and Dean, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We're glad to be here.
How do you get started, right? What happens when you get that phone call with a case come in? So walk me through that.
Well, so we usually get a referral from other investigators or a couple of the national autopsy places where the case just isn't for doing a second autopsy. So we appreciate those, but we'll get the intake from that, talk to the family. We need to get a little information from them first, because part of the issue that comes with families, and we never understand what they're going through. And that's so important for people to grasp.
Right.
Even in our coroner's work and giving death notifications and seeing what happens to people when you do that, we're never going to understand the position they find themselves.
Sure.
But we need to understand what happened, and we need to understand a little more about their concerns. But unfortunately, sometimes, and again, because we don't understand where they're at, and we don't pretend to, they're more emotionally attached to the situation. So we have to kind of weed out the facts from the emotion, just like anything else.
Sure.
So they often have very legitimate concerns with, most typically we hear about a suicide, for example, that they feel might have been a homicide, a few cases maybe an accident,
right, or
something suspicious about, well, we have a good one that I'll let Karen tell a little bit more about, actually, that had nothing to do with suicide or anything. Well, it did with an airline pilot. But so once we get through that, we explain to them what we're able to do, and then we get all the records, reports, and photographs from the investigating agencies, which is usually the coroner, medical examiner, and the law enforcement. And then, like Karen said earlier, we separate those, and she takes her file, I take mine, we review them, and then we get back together and we talk about them and see where we're at and who picked up what different types of details and things like that. Usually I get the call screening because I'm extension 1 on our phone system. So I usually know a little more about the emotional aspects, which can be important to understanding.
Oh,
There's
sure.
a lot of information in that. I mean, you're an investigator. Our listeners are investigators. So that's where that goes at. But every once in a while, we get cases involving insurance. We have our standard legal investigative cases, personal injuries, wrongful deaths. But we had a really interesting one involving an airline pilot and a life insurance beneficiary, which the question wasn't suicide or accident. It was initially thought it could be a suicide because of the type of injury. But then it became, under the insurance policy, he had been drinking. So was he intoxicated?
Right.
And then the insurance policy didn't pay at all if he was. And through some work and some details that she noted, we were able to determine that whether he was drinking or not, he wasn't intoxicated, not only by the laboratory test, but by the actions that he was doing. The house was thoroughly cleaned. He had actually left a vacuum cleaner out, was cleaning the dishes, which is actually what happened. He was cleaning and broke a butter dish and reached into the sink for it, and it cut his wrist. And he bled out literally all over the bottom of the house. Wow. So there was a lot of details that she noticed in that, such as, the dishes, that it was in a state of being cleaned and not just ordinarily cleaned, but like it was actively being cleaned and picked up through, 300 some photographs. So we made a lot of different determinations. That turned into a multi-million-dollar life insurance beneficiary for the widow.
Wow.
So that was one. And then we had one that actually just concluded last week that you'll hear about separately when we get a little more information, but it's been going on for a decade.
Wow.
And it was our first expert case involving litigation, where a police officer in Phoenix was shot and killed, and it was ruled a suicide. And the widow had to sue multiple times to get her different benefits, and she just got her final federal law enforcement survivor's benefit. We worked with other investigators on that. None of these are ever by ourselves, really.
Right.
They might be for families, but when they're involving litigation, everybody knows how that works. There's teams involved. But what memories do you have of cases we've done?
Well, the pilot case was pretty interesting. And, the fact that they were saying he was intoxicated, there was not even a glass of alcohol on the counter or anything. It was the place was clean.
Right.
But what we found out later was that he actually was terrified of the sight of blood. So basically when this dish cut his artery within the palm of his hand, it went up through the palm of his hand, and he started bleeding. He panicked, which of course, made him bleed out quicker.
Right.
An interesting case.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So I take it you guys then, you do cases all over the country then, right?
Right.
And I would assume there's a need for boots on the ground on some cases too, right? Or do you actually get up and, I mean, now it's hard to travel, but back before pre-COVID, I mean, were you actually going to places?
No, basically we get all of the files, the police reports, the coroner's report, any photos, and then we like put the case together from start to finish with all of the information that we get.
From time to time, if it's involving litigation, those are the ones I do exclusively in the expert consultations, those will often have either referrals from other investigators or we need to have other investigators. So in those cases, we often do have investigators that are doing a lot of that component usually as part of the legal team.
Right.
So it's always good to work with them too. But when it comes to particularly the family cases, the insurance benefit cases, and those types of things, it's a joint thing between us that we do together here.
Yeah, I got to think dealing with the families has got to be really difficult, right? Because there is that cloud there, right? They're expecting you to find something that's going to vindicate the way they feel about something, and that's not always the case, right?
Correct. We don't have a dog in the fight, so we're neutral.
Right.
And, they're invested with their every emotion you can imagine, and understandably so, but we have to step back and do it factually and not emotionally.
Oftentimes when we have an intake call, all the time we explain that to them, and they oftentimes express their understanding. Our contract's actually pretty clear. We've been threatened to be sued because we didn't contact NSA to get a satellite image over certain events, or and we're
dude. My company is called Satellite. You know how many phone calls I get with that?
As a matter of fact, your son company is called Satellite Investigations.
I get it all the time, man.
And you're in New York, so that just makes it all the better.
Even worse.
But we do, like I mentioned, I mean, we can't understand how they feel, we really one of the many things we learned at the coroner's office was it's so important to let the family know that it's okay for them to feel that way.
Right.
However it is they're feeling, it doesn't matter. But we still have to impart the facts. And part of the problem that families have is they don't feel like they're getting that. Well, we had 4 calls this week where people have died in the last 2 weeks. One today, I guess this is Monday. So, okay, 3 last week and 1 today.
Right.
But they feel like they're being neglected and ignored. And so we don't take those cases because there's nothing for us to do yet.
Right.
We just got called back on one today, the one today that took place, I think, in January. And they're finally comfortable again going forward. No matter how much they say, we understand, like Karen said, we don't have a dog in the fight. They really want us to give them the information they expect. To be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, it is what it is.
Right.
It's just sometimes there's a misunderstanding. The only cases we hear about are those that were bad, because if they're really good investigations, typically the family ends up being okay with the conclusions.
Sure.
But if the investigations aren't good, or they've watched too much CSI, in all honesty,
right,
then those are the cases we hear about. We have to get them past all that. And sometimes it's just a matter of finding new evidence that helps them support that. Well, Karen had one in a photograph where she found the evidence to help the family better understand that the person they wanted was not a serial killer. We've had those. So, we take it as sometimes we're saving people from being wrongfully charged as much as we're saving people from being wrongfully convicted.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, the facts are the facts, right? You got to be able to analyze it and keep an open mind, right?
Right.
Well, part of the issue is communication. If the family feel they are not being contacted properly by the coroner or the police officer or whoever it is they need to be in contact with, that frustrates them.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of coroners, a lot of medical examiners or coroners' offices, they may have an investigator do one thing, somebody else writes a report, somebody else is the diener for the autopsy, somebody else, goes and gets the body. With our training, we had to do it all. We stayed with the body from start to finish. They knew the contact.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that, right? One of the frustrating things that I deal with, and not only just dealing with the regular community, but dealing with attorneys, right? Where they ask you to do something or liaison with law enforcement on a huge case, like a death case. And they're like, this is so important. This, like I need this information right away. Why is it not done yet? It's like, hey, this is New York City. Like, how many people die every day? It's like, it's not the most important thing to that particular investigator for law enforcement. It's not as urgent for them as it is for you. They're going to do it and they're going to do it properly, but they're going to do it at their own time. And me calling them up and saying, hey, where's this case? Where's this case? Where's this case is only going to make it worse.
Right.
I had to have that tough conversation with one of my clients recently because they couldn't understand. And, and the environment today now with law enforcement too, politically what's going on. And we're not even going to jump into all that, but just on a side note, they're not motivated right now to do above and beyond, and that it's unfortunate,
yeah, right.
It's unfortunate,
exactly.
But it's the world that we live in here. And just being able to have that conversation with my attorney, like, hey, you got to chill out a little bit. It happens. And it's the same thing with the families here, right? This is the most horrific thing that you could think of has just happened to them. And it is their world right now. It is the most important thing to them right now. The investigator that's investigating it, yes, he's got a vested interest in doing the work, or she's got a vested interest in doing the work that needs to be done, but they're not going to drop everything, right? They have to do their family life and do everything else too, and they need to understand that. And I guess maybe having you as the bridge to help them understand that, at least somebody's telling them something, right? As opposed to nothing, right? I can see the real need for that.
Some places, their caseload is huge. And so it's hard to give one case precedence over another too. Right. So it's catch-22.
Yeah. I mean, it happens all the time, right? The cases will be closed when they're closed. You can't force anybody to do something. And when you start forcing, that's when mistakes are made, A, and B, that's when you start pissing people off, and that's never good either, right?
Nope. And on that note, we actually have to have that conversation with families. Two parts to that. One is, once you retain us or are thinking about it, don't keep harassing the agencies because they will shut down on you and then us.
Yeah.
And the other is, once you do give us the case, don't tell them that you have somebody that's going to show them how to do it or whatever.
They're talking about Karen, right? They're obviously talking about Karen, not about you.
So, we have to be very honest in our conversations. And we think that benefits them a lot when we do that.
Right. Yeah, it's a tough call. Those are always frustrating conversations to have, and it's but it's necessary. You have to do it, right? You gotta keep people on the right track because it could muddy things up. And I know, like when you start talking about fatalities and criminality involved in it, well, now there's the DA's office is involved, and they're not going to give you any information because they don't want it screwing the case up. They don't want that vindictive justice, the family going out and murdering the person that they're building a case against, right? That's always something you got to be careful of too, right?
Absolutely. And we've consulted with some law enforcement agencies, some prosecuting agencies where, of course, they give us that information. We did do one for a family where law enforcement agreed and the prosecutor to give us the information, but unfortunately for the family, we had to sign a confidentiality that said we wouldn't tell them anything from the case.
Yeah.
The family agreed, but then when it came time to tell them what our report was going to be, and including the things that we couldn't tell them, they became upset.
Right.
But the fact is, it helped in the prosecution of the case.
Right.
So, it can go all kinds of different routes.
Sure.
Well, like with everything, you have to set boundaries. And when we first come back into the private sector, I had to tell Dean he needed to set boundaries because people would call and they just want to tell their story. They really wouldn't have a case, but they'd want to talk. He spent hours and hours and hours, and I'd be like, really? You got to cut it off.
Tap me on the shoulder.
Yeah, right. Tap out. I find that with the matrimonial cases, right? When somebody hires you to do matrimonial and you find it, an answer they don't want to hear, and now all of a sudden you're becoming their therapist, and it's like, stop calling me, please go get professional help. Like I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, like, some of the challenges that you see now with COVID and dealing with that going forward here with your business model. Obviously, we can't travel, so there are some challenges there. What are some of the other challenges that you've seen and you've overcome, and what do you think going forward for the next year that we're looking at?
Well, that's an interesting question. We see it, we get it sometimes, but we see it a lot with other people. We kind of have a hard time helping people completely with dealing with the concept of it, because frankly, for us, we didn't know for 3 or 4 days something was going on, because we actually don't watch the news. We don't even have standard TV.
God bless you.
Could listen to the radio.
Yeah.
So we'll search our news, and we knew stuff was happening,
right,
but we didn't know that the governor had signed an emergency order, that the president signed an emergency order. We didn't know we knew on my dad's birthday, March 14th, that restaurants were going to probably start self-shutting down. We didn't know that the following week, when our grandkids came over for their spring break, that they went from a week to 2 weeks of spring break, and restaurants were closed and businesses were closed. We were still working.
Right.
And because in 2012, we sold our house and bought an RV and traveled around the country. So everything we've did has always been based on being remote anyhow.
Right.
Frankly, in a way, this helped better because, for example, Zoom that we're doing now is something that helped us out. But we have helped other investigators cope with some of these issues because they weren't really prepared for it. Karen's administrative work for the associations is nothing but remote. Two things slowed down for me a lot was obviously my travel. I used to travel a lot and teach and stuff. All of it, obviously, our conference meetings, our association meetings in person have stopped.
Right.
Our legal investigation, the attorneys still are waiting. I mean, they don't get hardly any clients yet.
Right.
Some of them, because in Colorado, they've held off the civil trials until the beginning of the year. They're not even taking filings.
Yeah.
So we don't even have that to deal with. But on the other hand, our family cases and our criminal defense cases have picked up. We just adapted right over to it. We didn't have it. So we've helped. We've developed some articles and stuff to help people cope with that. We developed a free training video to help people cope with that.
Sure.
For next year, for the outlook for next year, actually, it's not even looking good right now. They've already started canceling events for next year. Our National Western Stock Show, it's one of the largest events in Colorado, is already canceled for January. They're already looking at February and March for cancellations. I personally think it's extremely premature, among other things. I think that people are going to have to become more accustomed to dealing with their clients remotely. And in a way, that's a huge time and expense savings.
Big time.
And we had a family meeting, right, with Zoom. After a case. That was the first one we had, which was actually pretty helpful because I could share the screen and show certain things non-graphic.
It'll be interesting to see if we get any cases that have the COVID on the death certificate.
Yeah.
that we have not seen at this point, but it'll be interesting. We haven't seen that yet. We expect to see more suicides questioned, which we already are actually.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll see how it's is, because one of the things we have a lot of is dealing with the death certificate issue, and our forensic pathologist obviously deals with those. So we're able to take consultations if people have that or insurance benefit questions, which we think is going to come up. So we think for the investigative community as a whole, in general, and I know you've seen it, is going to take a different turn in 2021, but I think it'll be positive.
Yeah, I think those who can survive the storm, those who have pivoted are very beneficial. I know on my end in New York, I've seen some investigation companies just fold, and that's resulted in more work for me. And I hate to see them go, but those were the folks that weren't really in it anyways, right? They wasn't really a full-time gig for them, I think, for me, it's a full-time gig. So there's no way I was going out of business.
It's always been for us. It's always been the way, it's been our breadwinner.
Yeah.
And Colorado lost its licensing effective September 1st. So not only did we see a loss during this event, but we knew that we would lose it when that bill got vetoed, because they're just not going to be able to survive in a business sense, which was my reason for going to the coroner's office, because I couldn't survive in a business sense for my motor vehicle collision. I had to make that decision.
Right.
So, which changed my life in some very positive ways. So we've adapted pretty well to a lot of different things.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happens, right? The folks that adapt or are able to change are the ones that are talking about it. Folks that can't do it are gone by the wayside.
Our eyebrows were really raised when the CDC came out with the new way of coding and their wording.
Right.
since we have actually dealt with death certificates and know the procedure. So we kind of had a real problem with that.
They revised their coding procedure and how they want them reported, which had never happened before.
Right.
And forensic pathologists that I'm a member of started wondering what was going on with that. And at a later point, the CDC revised it and went back to the way it should be reported. But unfortunately, state health departments are still reporting the way CDC used to want it reported.
Yeah.
And that's actually become quite a bit of a big problem.
Oh, New York knows all about that.
Yes, they do.
We know,
Yes.
you know all about that here.
Yeah.
Many states
Yeah.
know that.
Including our own state. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but those things are important. But on that death certificate note, honestly, people don't realize one of the things we do, if I can real quick, Matt,
Yeah, sure.
and this comes from the coroner's office, this understanding was, not only is death a very serious issue and we take it very seriously, there is more humor, but when a person's death certificate is presented, it's a final statement of the life they led, in the sense that if they committed suicide and there's an insurance policy out there, maybe it won't pay, maybe it will. I had a case, the guy killed himself the day after his insurance policy would have been good so that his family would get benefits. That airline pilot one we mentioned, multi-million-dollar, because we were able to show that he was not intoxicated as the life insurance policy defined. He had some drinks, but not that. And the police officer, multiple insurance benefits,
Sure.
And pension benefits and survivor benefits for that. But there's a stigma that goes with that. It's like a wrongful conviction. If somebody's death certificate is wrong, that's a wrongful conviction. And if we can help change that by the facts and evidence, not only does it remove that stigma from that person's end of life statement, but it may benefit the family for insurance purposes.
Sure.
And we don't have a dog in the fight. We don't care if they get insurance benefits or not. Say they died of some sort of event involving a natural death. Well, come to find out, it was actually an accident and their life insurance is double indemnity. We've had a couple of those over the years that have been made significant differences because of the policy. So what we do is sort of, and I do expert criminal defense, but Karen helps on the wrongful convictions quite a bit. It's the same thing with the death certificate cases. If we're able to correct that, so to speak, wrongful conviction on their death certificate.
Yeah, that is just fascinating. Obviously, you guys do get a lot of referrals from other investigators. This is kind of your wheelhouse and your expertise. So how does the investigator get in touch with you? And when should they think in their mind, like, I should call these beers people in Colorado and rope them in? Like, when's a good time to do that, and how do they get a hold of it?
Sure. And this isn't to sell ourselves. This is actually the way it should be. Mm-hmm. Is call us first. Find out how we feel about the case, and we might be able to give advice on where to go with it
right
before we get involved, because too often investigators are putting the cart before the horse, and either the attorney or the family gets upset. It's like, well, wait a minute, you went out to prove my homicide, and now you're telling me to go hire these experts to prove the homicide. I thought you were doing that.
Right.
And then we come back and tell them, well, it wasn't a homicide after all. And $10,000 later on your investigator, and it's true. It's happened many, many, many times. And that's not including the families that aren't convinced and keep hiring more and more people. If you hire us for a case, say Matt calls us up and says, we got this case. It involves whatever it is, criminal, civil, insurance policy, family death, whatever. So what should I do? So we'll talk about it. We'll get some direction. And let's just say that we usually will say, well, we need to look at the case as a whole first so that we can tell you if anything was wrong, not just with the case itself and the decision, but also the things that you need to go look for doing your boots on the ground thing. Right. So you'll go out there. Now we give you all our recommendations and you go do the boots on the ground thing, and you come back and you look like a star to your client because you've covered all these bases you would have never thought of.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
You can reach us by phone is 970-480-7793. And you can reach our email associates@deathcasereview.com, and that reaches both of us.
Okay, perfect. Great. So, guys, I really, really appreciate you joining the show today. This was very cool. I think the tag team thing actually worked. I was a little nervous about that, but I thought it was really, really cool. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for everything that you guys do in the industry. And thank you for all the stuff that you did during COVID to make sure that, folks knew how to react and, how to deal and cope with these things. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of teamwork, people coming together for that to help each other out. That was fantastic to
Absolutely.
see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So great.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate it. So thank you everybody for checking the show out. We'll catch you on the next show. I think we're doing a quick hits again this Thursday, finishing up our osmosis features, and then we'll be back with a regular show on Monday. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great week.
Thanks to Karen and Dean for dropping in today. Can you believe the case about the airline pilot that had an incorrect death certificate? It's really admirable how this duo goes out of their way to find the truth. We also want to thank Crosstracks, Delft Point, and USABugsweeps.com for sponsoring the show. Have you checked out InvestigatorSToolbox.com yet? Remember, it only takes 41 cents a day to unlock the future of investigations. Make an investment in your business and yourself today. The 25% legacy discount won't last long. Use code PIP20 1836 to save more. Catch Matt teaching about InvestigatorSToolbox.com at the Cybercraft Summit on October 1st and 2nd. You can register free at cybercraftsummit.com. If you have a question or comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We want your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. Now, our next show is a quick hit segment with Chris Poulter. Chris joins Matt to talk about his role at the Osmosis Conference this year. Check it out this Thursday. We'll be back next Monday with a new show. Make sure you tune in. Now stay safe out there, everyone.